Welcome to the TA Leader Series, where we talk to leaders that are innovative, that are thinking about interesting things, that have nuggets that are helpful to all of us in our everyday professions. And today I'm thrilled to have Ron Fish with us. Ron, let you introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, thanks for that, Maury. Again, Ron Fish. I head up a talent acquisition program for a global software company that's based in the Salt Lake City, Utah area. And I'm here to promote a welcoming and inclusive culture, disability inclusion, and accessibility.
Well, everyone, I've been looking forward to this particular conversation because as a dyslexic, I'm very aware of how tough that can be for people and what a barrier can be for getting employment. I'm also thoroughly convinced that dyslexics have wires plugged into other places that some folks don't, which can make us highly productive workers. So, Ron, why do you care about this? What got you into this focus area?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I've always been inspired by people with disabilities in my own life, and I've been able to help them make an impact. Back in 2022, my company became acutely aware we had a website that was not accessible. In fact, I was told by a UX manager that we were literally eliminating people with disabilities from our applicant pool. I kind of freaked out as a talent acquisition leader, as you could imagine. And we quickly were able to work with the website team to unlock accessibility. And since that time, over an 18-month period, we essentially reached the ADA compliance pinnacle. So we're really excited about that. But really that journey really kind of what I call, inspired me or kind of sparked something in me that really connected with that personal side of things. So I've begun to promote this in a much bigger way on my end.
People have the perception that if you're hiring someone with a disability, they're going to be a substandard performer, that it might be a bit of charity. But I'll tell you, we worked years ago with one of the Wall Street trading firms. And for traders, they actively looked for people who were ADD and ADHD because they were so good at handling the millions of little things that came at them. If you asked them to sit down and write a long essay, they were a disaster. But on a training room floor, they absolutely excelled. So a little bit of it is finding the right match with people, right? Have you worked with that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the big stigmas attached. 75% of the global workers that have disabilities don't disclose it to their employers. And some of that is for that exact reason, right? If I disclose I've got dyslexia like you have, you're very open about it. Somebody may think differently of me, and not everybody's comfortable in their own skin. So really creating that welcoming environment where people feel like they're in a safe space where they can share. And I say, don't just bring your whole self to work, be your whole self at work. And that really enables people to do that.
So what have you seen the barriers in the application process? What are the trip points that tend to disqualify people early on in the process before their skills can really be evaluated?
From a disability perspective, I assume. I think a lot of companies don't lead with offering accommodations. In every job description that we post, there's an avenue for people to request accommodations. And I think very often people are hesitant to apply. You have hiring managers who are not really skilled in interviewing somebody maybe with ADHD or with dyslexia. Simple things that they can do, they can be coached to do is after you ask a question verbally, also type that question in the chat to allow that person to see it from a different perspective or refer back to it. With ADHD, if you ask me a 3 or 4 part question, I may forget, the couple of the second parts of the question. So to be able to refer back to that in the chat, simple accommodations can be helpful. But I think a lot of times things fall apart at that very early stage because people don't feel welcome. Or you have a recruiter that just doesn't know what to do. This individual is deaf or hard of hearing. How do I handle that? What do I do? Instead of embracing it, maybe they don't really get it off to a great start and help drive the process end to end.
It's amazing what technology can do. That can, in many cases, level the playing field and allow somebody with some great skills to contribute fully. Because the technology does all of that. I'm particularly aware of people who will make huge judgments based on typos. If they see a single typo, they want to put an entire laundry list of human failings. Don't pay attention to detail, and on it goes. I think we've all made a typo or two in our lives. Have you, since you've started focusing on it, have you been more successful at hiring people with disabilities, and have you seen a difference in your business or in your talent pool?
Absolutely. I think just raising awareness and bringing visibility to this, you pointed out a great one. You know, historically, if you have a typo on your resume, it's like, oh, the manager pitches it aside, right? But we're educating hiring managers to say, let's maybe use that as a data point. Let's not use that as the point to rule somebody out, because there could be a disability there. So let's explore that. Let's limit that bias. Let's really create a situation where we are sort of checking our biases at the door, making sure that we are looking at things objectively. And then if at the end the person is not as qualified as another applicant, great. But let's not limit people because they, you know, maybe they have a stutter when they're talking, or maybe they ask you to repeat a question during an interview. It doesn't mean they're not intelligent. Doesn't mean they're not highly intelligent. It just means that they might have a little difficulty hearing or perceiving what you're saying, and managers don't always ask the best questions. Let's be honest about that.
Sometimes very high IQ people often do have disabilities. You know, you look at Welch, the head of GE. He stuttered quite prominently. You know, there are lots of examples. Dyslexic, I tend to know a lot of them that have had phenomenal careers, incredibly bright people that, like me, just can't spell. Have you successfully hired people? Do you think you've been able to create an environment where people feel more comfortable disclosing? And have you been able to bring in people that have contributed?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been able to help sort of shepherd the process to ensure that the hiring manager is providing that inclusive environment for the interview. So yes, we've definitely been able to hire. We've also been working with hiring teams to sort of allocate headcount for hiring people with disabilities and then advertising in those communities in order to really give back and promote disability inclusion. So we've been successful doing that, getting hiring managers on board, understanding that as a company that's largely remote, we can provide a very accessible environment because somebody can work out of the comfort of their own environment that they've probably set up as an ideal workplace. So yeah, we've been successful doing that, promoting it and getting hiring managers on board with promoting within the ability communities to identify talent and onboard them.
You seen a change in your corporate culture now that you've sort of pushed the assumptions on this area? Has it changed the culture of making people more willing in general to bring their whole selves to work?
It has. In fact, we have an accessibility club, we call it, and that's sort of the pesky club that started letting me know that we were excluding people with disabilities because of a terrible career site design. So that accessibility club, after I got involved, we kind of relaunched it in more of a global capacity. So it's really attracted a lot of individuals, and we've had these wonderful meetings where we've discussed disabilities like dyslexia, ADHD, autism, some of the maybe invisible disabilities. And during those sessions where we've had these open discussions, people are saying things like, I've mentioned to people that I have a disability before, but I've never felt free to talk about it. Or others that say, I never mentioned it. I was always afraid somebody would look at me differently. And they're openly on a conference call with 100 people, just sort of talking about this. So talk about creating a safe space where people are feeling comfortable to do that. We've absolutely seen that welcoming culture, creating that welcoming environment make a big impact internally at my company.
We've seen there's so many people that have someone in their life, their extended family, who does have a disability, and knowing they work for an organization that's making an effort makes them feel good about it. I mean, I think there really are lots of overflow effects of doing this for morale, for people just feeling, you know, good about where they work and wanting to be more constructive in what they're doing. So it's really wonderful. It's one of the things, we love video because it's one of the great ways you can actually talk about a disability that may not be a visible disability. We look at a lot of websites and a lot of recruitment marketing, and sometimes it feels like, oh, let's go find somebody, in a wheelchair, or let's go find somebody that we can tick the box and say, oh, we've got a disability picture here. It's the tokenism can be really extreme sometimes. But it's a wonderful way to be able to let people talk about what they've done, how they've accomplished, and how their careers are flourishing. So that's a piece. Have you looked at that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an interesting data point to recognize that disability is the only diversity category that people can move into and out of. So naturally, some people are born with a disability that they're going to have for the rest of their life. Other people may have late life blindness or have an accident, and they might not have checked the box, I have a disability, when they joined a company, but a year in may have a disability, and then they may recover from it and no longer have that disability. So it's interesting how this can impact not just new hires, right, and creating that accommodating process, but also the existing employee population that may not have even thought about how an accommodation could help them, but later it becomes a critical thing to create that ideal workplace for them.
And there's nothing that makes someone appreciate handicapped parking spaces until they need it. They break their leg and all of a sudden they become critical. It does change your perspective or someone close to you.
Absolutely.
Great. And so what last question, because I don't want to keep you too long, but what advice would you give to other TA leaders, particularly global TA leaders? Because I think this is a problem that gets more complex because you've got more bias and so forth, more cultures globally. How would you recommend someone get started to really make a difference here?
Yeah, the beauty of it and the big question I always get is, what is this going to cost me, right? And the great thing is that there's really no startup cost. You can literally make an impact for $0. And I'll say that most of the impact that I've made, even that's led up to us winning an award within the state of Utah, has literally had very limited costs associated with it. So just creating accommodating processes, creating opportunities, advertising within disability communities, becoming a welcoming employer that's disability friendly. All of those things don't cost any money. So you can get started. And because you are part of HR or recruiting potentially, you can literally just change what you do on a day-to-day basis and promote it and raise awareness with your own team, where we can now become more accommodating or be on the lookout if there is an opportunity where somebody discloses a disability that we can make a direct impact. So there's really not a big cost associated with it. If you know sort of the elements that you can begin to change, modify, etc., you can make that difference literally at zero cost. Just some kind of a labor of love, some time investment, but it's all worth it, well worth it in my view.
I suspect if you create an environment where people feel comfortable disclosing disability and you've got current employees who disclose, that goes a long way to changing the bias about, oh, those employees aren't as good, or somehow we're going to have to do extra work because they can't keep up. When you figure out that several of your coworkers have a disability, it does bring it very real, very fast. So it's all wonderful. And lastly, I understand you're speaking at the ERE conference in November about this topic. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Great. Well, I would encourage people, if you're going to be at ERE, to make sure they make your session, and if not, to give some thought to joining it. And I suspect you would be open if people wanted to reach out to you to learn more about what you're doing.
Absolutely. I'm very active on LinkedIn, lots of interesting threads. Feel free to loop me in, send me a connection request. Happy to chat or get involved in your dialogues out there.